Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm Sahid, and I'll be moderating this session on Recruitment Trends 2026. So, thank you for joining on a bright Thursday evening. And over the next 40 to 50 minutes, we are going to unpack what's actually changing in hiring. And this conversation is not going to be based on assumptions or industry noise, but this is entirely based on insights gathered directly by us from surveying 80 plus CHROs, HR leaders from across industries, enterprises, and geographies. Over the past few months, our team at Zappyhire has conducted an in-depth survey, which is the basis of the conversation we're going to have today on how organizations are approaching AI, recruitment efficiencies, hiring decisions, and also the future of TA in 2026. Uh, those who are here, uh, you are going to be receiving an exclusive early access to the report. And before I introduce the speakers, I would just want to share a couple of notes. This session is going to be recorded. It is being recorded. If you have any questions during the entire chat, please use the Q&A on your end to post your questions. We'll cover all the Q&As towards the end of the session. And I just want to put it out again that the data covered over here is very exclusive. It is only going to be shared in this particular session, and you guys, those are attending, will be the only one receiving it right now. The public release will happen a few weeks down the line. So with that, we start, and it's an honor for me to introduce the first panelist, Myles Hopkins. He's based in South Africa. He's founder and CEO of Beyond Agile, helping organizations build agility, adaptability, and sustainable transformation in rapidly changing business environments. He recognized business agility and AI influencer with strong footprint across Africa and also global business communities. He spearheads initiatives on transforming HR practices to align with modern agile organizations. And he also has deep expertise in organizational change, adaptive leadership, AI, and workforce transformation. So, welcome, Myles. We are great to have you here as part of this conversation.
Thank you very much. Yeah, good to be here, and great to be speaking to my colleagues in India. I visited India last in 2018. I spoke at a business agility conference in Bangalore. I didn't stay long enough, and I would love to be back again. So I'm really honored and very pleased to be here. And I think, over the years, I've moved sort of from really looking at HR as a whole, human capital, HR, people, whichever you want to call it. And then I moved into the world of business agility. I've started working very much in the world of AI as well, developing my own AI tools and writing white papers on AI. But I have to say that my passion, and I believe that the future of business sits with talent. I have always maintained that it's not the companies that have the best technology that will win the war or win the battles in the trenches. It's the companies that have the best talent at the end of the day, because it's that talent that thinks about the next piece of technology, develops the next piece of technology, it launches the next piece of technology, maintains that technology, adapts it as they go along. So if you are in the recruitment space, the talent space, the human resources space, you're in the right space. I believe that that is the center of where the future of business lies. So I'm very, very pleased to be here today. And I want to thank the Zappyhire team for inviting me to be part of this session.
Thanks, Myles, for the great opening note. And I think it would set the base for the conversation. I think today on the call, we also have the best of talent across, because they are learning, they are eager, they are wanting to improve. Moving on to the next panelist, we have our very own joining us from Zappyhire, Jyothis, who's co-founder of Zappyhire. Zappyhire is an AI recruitment platform trusted by over 103,000 users, including Maruti Suzuki, Federal Bank, and Himalaya. He has 19 plus of experience across AI, enterprise tech, and digital transformation. Beyond his corporate experience, Jyothis has contributed as a Stanford seed consultant, advisory board member at Christ University, and a startup mentor for the Kerala government. Happy to have you on board today, Jyothis.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. Looking forward.
Okay. I think without any other ado, we can start with where things actually stand. Namely, if you can move to the next slide. So we did a survey where we were talking about what organizations use AI for, and out of this, 76% of organizations are using AI for JD creation and resume screening. 39% of them are using for scheduling, and only 21% for onboarding. So the funnel has a very clear shape: AI heavy at the top, almost entirely human dependent at the bottom. This drop off is stark. Jyothis, we'll start with you. As per the data on the screen, it is clear that AI is being used mainly for the initial stages of recruitment. Why do you think that is? Is it where implementation challenges start to show up at the bottom of the funnel?
Yeah, that's interesting data to look around because I've seen this kind of use cases adoption in large enterprises, especially in India context. Because theoretically we were thinking the talent, especially when it comes to this recruitment, um, that pipeline thinks that it's a leaky pipeline, right? As in, like, you see a lot of candidates on one side of it, and when you give an input to that pipeline, and you see that a lot of filtering happens as a leakage, and towards the end you will get some quality people. That's the assumptions, and of course there is a screening and interviews has happened between that. But in the new way of looking at this pipeline is slightly different, because I've seen, some of our customers, especially who use AI in a broad way, they use or they probably would see this pipeline as a predictive talent intelligent, not looking at a screening tool or not looking at a simple way of doing the resume filtering, right? So that is probably not the right way. I have, from the industry itself, I have seen quite larger examples of this the same. And a recent trend I have seen that AI has been adopted in the interview intelligence. It's a very interesting aspects to it. Of course, it can act as a AI can act as a support to the interviewers while they're doing the interviews, giving recommendations, and if there is any difference between what is being built through through the resumes and so on and so forth, and versus what he is what's the candidate actually representing in the during this interview. Those kind of the delta points can be raised by the AI system and guide the interviewers to the right outcome. So I have seen a lot of interview intelligence are building on that one side of it. And how do we manage the post interview engagements, right? Especially post offer engagements. So instead of doing in a very what do you call autonomous fashion of giving them surveys and so on and so forth, can we make it more engagement model, right? So those kind of thought process is already been in place, and I've seen some of our customers are started implementing it as well. So not to reduce or not to reduce the time to hire, but also can we use AI to get an holistical picture is something which is currently is in the trending. Because just AI is not just for SPD hiring, right? Of course, it's velocity. Hiring velocity is an important KPIs to look around, but I don't think we are going to stop there. We are going to spread AI into multiple other aspects, as I mentioned before.
That's a very interesting insight, Jyotis. And I think I don't want to say years, but couple of months down the line, increasing AI at the bottom and the in more decisions, which is the P1 for many organizations, not just those who are piloting, but also those who are scaling. Miles, I just want to talk to you about how does an AI embedded funnel look like end to end, which is where AI is involved in multiple processes across the funnel, and where is the highest leverage place most teams still aren't using it?
I think Sayed, I'm not going to talk. I'm going to talk to that question, but I want to talk about a couple of other things as well, if you don't mind. I think where a lot of people are still not really understanding this talent world that we live in. I'll give you an example now. I have a client of mine that wanted a couple of project managers, okay, big banks in South Africa. Now, I sent them CVs in February. So now they get hold of me today and they say, okay, we want to see these people. I said, sorry, that's great talent. They've already moved on. They've already got new jobs. Okay. So I think one of the things, there's a couple of things that I want, and I'm not directly answering your questions here, but I do want to sort of almost raise the level of that discussion. I'm going to, in an indirect manner, talk to you. So a lot of people are talking about, oh, but AI is going to take my job, and we're all going to be without jobs, etc., etc., etc. The reality of the situation, if you look at the World Economic Forum jobs report of 2025, it said that AI and automation will destroy 78 million jobs. Now, that's huge, but it's actually going to create 170 million new jobs. So I think where the talent professionals, the talent acquisition professionals, but also the HR teams need to be saying, what are those future jobs, and where do we currently stand within our organization on those future jobs? So instead of, I have companies come to me and say, we want you to help us with our strategic workforce planning. And I'm saying the world has changed. I actually start talking about strategic capability planning now, where I say we first of all got to look at the capabilities the business requires. Then we must look at the skills they require to actually be able to do that. And then we must look at what we have within our organization that matches those skills. Because let's say, for example, I'm going to use a simple example, and it's not a brand new job. We know that data scientists have been around for a while, but there's a huge shortage globally of data scientists. So, at the end of the day, if you're not thinking 5 years ahead and saying, where do I want to be with my talent over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're eventually going to get to a blockage where you're going to say, I don't have this talent. So coming back to the huge benefits of AI is that AI can help us really move very, very rapidly. Okay, so there's tools out there that if you look at it, you actually have access to 700 million candidates out there. Okay, so you put in your requirements. I can choose from 700 million people globally. I can put it where it is, whatever. Now, in the past, that was impossible. But now the question becomes, and it comes back to your question, I think, Saeed, is how do we move from quantity to quality at the end of the day? You know what I mean? Where do we decide how we're going to use AI, what it's going to help us do, not let AI do everything. We start talking about humans in the loop. And I'm going to read something that I sent to somebody yesterday, and I keep on saying, why don't you remember this wording? But I'm going to put it in here. So what we need to be using AI is to handle the science of recruitment. The science of recruitment is data, processing, and scheduling. But your talent professional should be focusing on the art of recruitment, which is empathy, culture, and leadership. So people talk about the humans in the loop, and I was on a panel discussion yesterday, and we said that may actually be the wrong way to term it. We should actually say AI is in the loop. So we're the humans, we're driving the AI, and the AI helps us make decisions. It gives us a much wider access to a huge amount of data. But what do we do with that data, and how do we manage it to make better talent decisions at the end of the day? Because as I think you mentioned, it's not about, how many people that we put through the pipeline. It's what is the quality of those people and how are they adding. Your chief financial officer is going to ask you, how did this person contribute to the bottom line? Not how quickly did you get him through the talent or her through the talent pipeline. So I do think we need to be getting much more. I think the 76% for AI for JD creation and resume passing, you could most probably even increase that. I don't see a problem with that. I think the interviewing, scheduling, and the actual AI interviews, which Zappyhire also has built into their platform. That can help us a lot. That can, because I can actually end up interviewing 100 people today. Okay, not me personally, but my AI. Then I take that information and I decide which ones I'm going to. So we can actually increase all of these numbers at the end of the day. And I'm not worried about the fact that the onboarding is the lowest number, because that's the end of the pipeline. So, we don't want to be putting everybody through the onboarding. We're going to say, what's the quality? Who's the best people? Now we start with the onboarding process, but it's going to come down to your culture and your empathy and just that quality of hire. And again, I'm going to reiterate this, and then I'll keep quiet about it, is to say, you need to be planning what talent you require into the future. And look at what talent you have internally in your organization first, because if I'm looking for data scientists, so is every other company out there looking for data scientists. And if I can build my own talent internally, that's prize number one. It may not always be possible. I've got a client now, a big insurance company, where a lot of their people are nearing retirement. So building internally is not a big option for them. But that's where I normally start.
think you unpack a lot of things, and I think it's a science and looking at people in the future, what we want to hire internally. Yeah, those are good points. And yeah, we talked about onboarding with the only lowest end because it's a bottom. But I think it can also enhance. There are lots of no-shows that happen. Maybe we can see more use cases that are happening over there, and how can AI make us evaluate better decisions. So I think that very well aligns with our next thing that we want to talk about. Remove, if you can change the slide. So I think before that, Jyothis, do you want to add anything to the conversation?
No, I think I totally agree with what Myles said, and well articulated.
So, well, we have a clear picture of where AI lives in the funnel today and where it does not. We can talk about what happens after adoption, because in our efficiency, in our report, we also asked about how they are measuring efficiency. If it is AI is making them more efficient. So 70%, 76 have report increased efficiency uh, because of AI tools, but 38% of them are saying that they can't measure or prove ROI. So, and overall, 83% of TA and HR leaders are able to link AI success to mainly productivity metrics like time to hire. So, other things like you mentioned, Myles, quality of hire, and all, these are not uh, unfortunately being tracked. And so, I'll come to you. So, when a TA leader goes to a CF or CEO to justify and secure AI budget, what data or points do they need to show?
Yeah, this question is to me, is it?
It's to Myles.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I think, again, and hopefully you don't get frustrated with me. I said I do answer your question, but in a different way. Okay, so roundabouts, so I'm talking about AI generally now. I'm not talking about AI and recruitment or HR. I'm talking generally. Around about 8-9 months ago, there was a report in MIT that said that 95% of AI initiatives within companies, a lot of people read that it said they were failing. It wasn't that they were failing. It was that they were actually not achieving the ROI that people thought they would achieve. And to me, there's a good reason that I've actually started. I don't know, in India, there must have been a movie, and now I'm starting to show my age. It was called Back to the Future. Okay, so I believe that we have to go back to the future. And what do I mean by that? Because essentially the reason why 95% were failing, and you can apply this in the talent attraction and talent acquisition space, is that people don't realize that value flows horizontally. It starts at a certain point. So you might get a vacancy request. It might then go to the recruitment team, and then to somebody, and then, interview or whatever. But that value is touching different departments, and it flows horizontally. So we have to really go back to our business processes. That's why I talk about back to the future. We've got to go back to basics and understand how this value flows across the business. And once I understand where that value flows, then I can start making decisions about where it's best to use humans, where it's best, so full-time employees, where it's best to use contract workers, where it's best to use ecosystem partners. Now, when I mention ecosystem partners, I mean, like, let's say you're a bank and you suddenly want to develop your own blockchain capability, but you've never done blockchain before. It's most probably better to partner with a specialist in blockchain and bring that in, and you go develop it all yourself. And then the fourth point is, where is it best to bring in, your bots or your AI agents? And then we can, from that, we're actually going to start getting our talent requirements, because, we might be looking for, let's say, bank tellers, but one of my clients in Mauritius, all their bank tellers are automated. There's no humans that are bank tellers. And I'm sure in India, you've got the same in some of the banks. So we need to start looking at it from that back to the future perspective. And I think there's sort of, there's something else that stuck with me there. I just quickly getting my brain sorted on that, but it's this. So if we understand what it is that we require, and then looking at that, you're saying 38% can't measure or prove ROI. If we understand how that value flows, and, I don't know what the statistics are like in India, but, here in South Africa, it can take months to fill a vacancy. Now, every month that vacancy is not filled is a cost to the company. And if you're being a lot more proactive about your strategic and capability planning, you actually say, okay, I know that my turnover rate here is X. I am going to proactively start recruiting. I've got a very, very proactive client who, if they see, for example, a data scientist that they really, really like, even if they don't have a vacancy, they hire them because they know that they're in short supply. And then, the productivity measures, I think, are okay, but I mentioned this earlier, it's that how quickly do I get somebody adding value to the bottom line of the business on those new hires? And those new hires might be internal new hires or external new hires.
That's, I think, great. I think the point you mentioned about business cost to business opportunities, if hiring is slow, if time to hire is slow, so that can lead to business loss. So essentially, maybe we are saying that as long as they're able to justify business outcomes because of their AI tools in hiring, maybe reducing that could plan. But Jyothis, I would want to come to you, right? Because you do lots of interactions with teams that are already your customers, that are prospective customers, that are using tools. According to your experience, why are recruitment teams mainly focused on tracking time to hire and not other metrics that Myles also talked about? Although he talked about in general as well, but more specifically hiring.
Right. It's a simple reason because speed is very easy to measure, but values are not very easy to measure. Right. It's on time to measure the values of the recruitment process. So that is one of the reason where I see people always give a more weightage to the speed or hiring velocity than anything else. But there is a problem when I go deeper into the data. Let's imagine you took 40 days to hire 10 people. Okay, 40 days to hire 10 people, and you use AI. Probably you reduce that into, let's say, 20 days and hire same 10 people. But later, after 3 months or 4 months, let's say 7 of them are leaving the company, right? That is but that is not going to change with the using AI only when it comes to the screening or the speed of it. So what exactly you're trying to do is you are reducing the days, but the quality of the hire is still the same, right? So basically you're kind of accelerating the mistake using AI, but the outcome there is not improving, that people are still leaving that company, staying with the company, right? So it's a big cost for the companies as well. So it's very interesting to look around, and probably we need to expand the KPIs a little more than just on the speed, right? Speed is not only way of measuring or only way of concluding AI is good in terms of the adoption, or is it effective in terms of the adoption as well. So if I look at the data, 38% still don't know how to measure it. Probably AI would have done a better things there as well, but still, since they are not able to measure it, they can't state it is increased the efficiency or the quality of the hire. That is both are a very very important aspect to look at. But how to use AI to improve the quality of the hire, right? So there is an interesting thought we had in our lab also, that how can we contribute, forget about the hiring decisions, but in a general decision making, how are we going to take a more accurate decisions, right? Whenever we have a lot of data points in around of that decisions, apparently we will take a better decisions. Now if you draw the similar line in the process of recruitment, can I bring more data points about the candidates in front of the decision maker so that he can take a more well-informed hiring decisions, right? It could be multiple engagements or from the social profiling of this candidate, so on and so forth, or even their personal attributes, checking through multiple other engagements or assessment engines, so on and so forth. So we decided to bring around 17 plus data points across the candidate and showcase to the respective decision maker to take the right decisions. So it could be a cultural fit also, very important to aspect to look around. It's not just always skill, right? Skills are good, but what if that person is not opt or not act for this particular culture of this company? So that is also very important. And we also come up with something called profiling of their better employee or best employee in that organization. So we create that benchmark, and using that benchmark try to measure the candidates on a separate note as well. So that way we can say that, okay, some of the attributes or the competencies of that existing employee who stayed a longer period in the company, how much different is a new candidate with that. Not just for the skills, as I said, there are multiple competencies need to be look around and see if this is good enough to take into the next take into the company as a hire, a new hire. So this way, speed is very important, as I always agree, but we should start looking at beyond the speed and see what are the different other KPIs can contribute to measure the ROI or the effectiveness of the adoption. I hope there should be a framework to be introduced by the leaders in this industry, and see if we can use this kind of a benchmark or a framework to measure the results or the effectiveness of the AI adoption.
You brought a lot of good points, Jyothis. Profiling the candidates. I think that could be one of the key point of thing. And if that can be, measured and metricized, would increase the adoption overall. And would I think a CFO would also be more confident in investing that amount into AI tools, because they can see clear ROI besides speed as well. And let's see, I think leaders, Zappyhire was one of them. So you mentioned 17 metrics. So I think maybe that we can include. Myles, do you have anything to add on this particular what Jyothis said?
I think Jyothis makes some fantastic points here. I think at the end of the day, AI is there to do the heavy lifting for us. Okay, so let's talk about recruitment at the end of the day. As I said, if you've got a built-in AI interview tool into your system, I can interview as many people as I want to in one day. Whereas if I'm a human, I can't. Okay. And then I get those results. Don't, and I'm sure everybody on this call wouldn't do that. But don't just take the AI's word for it. Have a look at what the results are that come out of it. You know, what are the trust scores? How closely are they matched to the job spec, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then take your top 20 and then maybe do, you know, human interviewing with it. I also see, you know, that Pushpa's asked a question there that talks about where, you know, we're matching the CVs and maybe somebody hasn't put all the information in, and that'll happen at the end of the day. But remember, AI is only guiding you. You need to make those final decisions. And you know, if you do use AI interviewing, and you can also use, you know, rapid testing, etc. There's so many great tools out there right now that can, you know, process so many applications in such a short space of time, give you a short list. But that short list is still up to you to then finalize at the end of the day, and make sure. And if you're seeing that, you know, I think Jyothis, it might have been you that mentioned it, or you said that, you know, we're hiring some great talent, but they're leaving after, you know, a couple of months. Then we're having it's not so much a problem with the skills of those employees. We're not then assessing the right culture fit for them. You know, we need to understand the culture that we have in our organization and how do people fit into that. And we need to match those at the end of the day. So, and the AI tools out there are varied. You know, they're fantastic. The one thing I do say to people around AI, so when AI first started, by the way, for anybody who does know or doesn't know this, AI actually came about in 1956, all right, by Turing. And it's only recently with agentic AI that we've started really seeing it go big. But when I first started exploring it 3 years ago, when I was developing my own AI tool, I subscribed to every, you know, AI, sort of channel out there, and every, oh, that looks like a great tool. Oh, that looks like a great tool. And I just never chose a tool because every day there was a brand new tool coming out that just looked better. So my recommendation to people is determine what you want the AI to do. Go look for the best tools out there. I mean, definitely in the recruitment space, Zappyhire is one of the leaders there. But if you choose Zappyhire, let's say, for example, and for everybody's, no, I don't work for Zappyhire, okay, but I love the tool, so I'm just telling you that. But if you choose Zappyhire and tomorrow you see another tool there that actually looks more attractive to you, stick with Zappyhire until such time as it's not meeting your requirements, and give feedback to the tool. And that goes for any tool. So every single, you know, everybody every day tells me, why don't you start using Claude and Claude Coworker? I use a tool actually developed by a South African in Silicon Valley called Spock. Spock does everything I need it to do. I can build my own agents in it. It's brilliant. I don't need a different tool. There may be better tools out there, but I've chosen Spock and I want to stick with that for now. And I would say the same with your hiring tools. You know, use it wisely, use it effectively. But remember, at the end of the day, when I spoke earlier on, let it do the science of recruitment, whereas you do the art of recruitment, which is those decisions are still up to the humans to make, you know, those decisions. But it's going to speed up your processes radically, and it's changed. So I'm a management consultant. It's changed the world of consulting. I've just done a proposal in this last week. In the past, I used to do proposals where I charged by the hour. Now I charge by outcomes, because what used to take me 2 weeks to do can now take me half an hour. All right. So now I say to my clients, I'm going to charge you X amount for this outcome. I don't charge hours because everything's just been so rapidly, you know, increased by the use of AI across everything. I think I just love this world of AI.
I think you summarize it very well, and business outcomes matter more than anything else. I think that helps us segue into the next section, which is where the teams have demonstrated efficiency, but they also struggle to connect to leadership with the outcomes. But there's another I won't say problem, but there's another concern that most of people have said on the candidate side. Right, 43%. Rimli, if you can move to the next slide. So 43% of those survey respondents cite ensuring AI decisions are unbiased as a top challenge, and 38% cite data security as a concern. So as a concern and confidence, AI fairness is surprisingly shallow. Most respondents are only fairly confident, but they can't, as Jyothis said, they don't have a framework for it. So the question to both of you, will start with you, Jyothis, is in the race of pushing AI adoption in every aspect of organization, how do we ensure that we can trust the AI? What steps or questions do we need to ask the AI software vendors for its authenticity?
Interesting question, Sahid. From a vendor perspective, I can answer a few of questions which I encounter. Basically, the large enterprises, when large enterprises case, they need some sort of a guarantee that the data is not going to any black boxes or any other, LLMs, which is nowhere, no control about it, right? So, how do we, as in from an enterprise standpoint, how do we ensure that our data, our candidate data, is not going anywhere where they don't have a control over it, or they don't have access to it, right? For example, in India, I'm sure that that's in the Europe you have a GDPR, in US. SOC 1, SOC 2 compliances in India. Of course, we also got introduced to DPDP Act, right? So most of our customers are asked us to do some changes while we are collecting the data from the candidates, get the concern from them to comply with the GDPR Act as well. The few questions I got from the large enterprises towards to the implementation side is one, is it your platform is auditable, right? So we normally say yes to that, because audit can be from the existing company's internal data team or IT team, or it could be from an external team also. Some of the cases, KPMG or even Deloitte will come and audit our process in three aspects: data security, infrastructure, and the process. So they will go deeper into it. And of course, in India, especially from the banking perspective, RBI is putting a strong compliance with all the data we are securing, and where the data is going to store also. So data cannot be stored outside India at the moment. So similarly, in Europe also, we have a data centers in Paris. We have a data center in Mumbai for Indian customers. Similarly, in the US and APAC region as well. So this is very important to look at. Look at the AI layer, where this AI layer is embedded into your application layer. And do you have a AI guardian layer as well? So that's another important question been asked by the customers. So what is this guardian layer? Is means that you have an AI layer, and you have you have a wrapper AI layer, and you have an LLM layer. In between, there is a security policy layer also need to be there. So why it is important? Because from interacting with the LLMs need to be very much validated before it's get into the application layer of that infrastructure, right? Application infrastructure. So both sides, not one direction. Whenever we are giving the data, of course, the policies and security layer need to be cross-checked. If the data is good enough, if we are not passing anything which is personally identifiable, so on and so forth. When we are receiving data from the LLM, that is also need to be validated before we accept that within the application. Now, another question would be, see, if imagine we are using LLM, so whose LLM account you guys are using? Are you going to use Zappyhire LLM, which we don't have any control, right? So that is one of the concept we are currently building, is something called BYOK, build your own keys. That's called build your own keys. So that means, for example, if I'm let's say I'm talking to a large enterprises, and they have their own LLMs. Either they have built internally or they are actually purchasing from external parties. In both ways, they can create that LLM and deploy it on their own server systems, and they probably will have some tokens and keys, so they can use that key in at Zappyhire. So what has happens is whenever Zappyhire put an AI question or probably a prompt, that prompt will go to that my customer's LLM instance than any public instance or any other Zappyhire instance, for example. So similarly, we can actually control how this LLM is being used properly and how this data is being properly managed as well. So this enterprises LLM is probably deployed within their infrastructure landscape, so its data is not going outside. So they will have a more control it. So this concept of bring your own keys is something is going to be a important aspect is going forward. That's why enterprises will have a more control on the data, which is either in terms of going out or in terms of the data coming in. In both aspects, they can do the controllable. On top of it, we should also bring the responsible layer in the AI. I think it's been a very interesting discussion happens in this community, that how do we ensure that responsible AI can I audit the training data, right, used by the vendors to train their machine learning, right? So can we get that data or audit the data, see these annotations properly? So those kind of questions is rapidly coming nowadays, and it's very essential to ensure also that they are not dealing with any black box systems. They are dealing with the systems which can be keep the transparency, and they also have a control to look around and see the audits at any point of time in case if there is any discrepancies they have noticed. In fact, most of enterprises is now coming up with AI policies, like data security and data aspects and data policies. They're also coming with these AI policies, not just policies, but also a training for the users. Whoever is going to use any third-party AI systems, their internal team or L&D team is now pushing a generic training that how to use the system, right? See, the training and the awareness has to come from the both side, not only from the people who are making it, right? On the other hand side, whoever is going to use the system, they also should have used some sort of a vigilant way of using it, right? They cannot use it by giving their personal data and ask a few their personal problems and so on and so forth. That's not the right way. Even CEO of our the CEO of the large LLM company also give a very clear indication that that's not the way to use it, right? So this responsibility of users as well as providers or vendors has to go hand in hand, so that the entire community who is going to consume, who wants to provide, will get a proper outcome by adopting it, and very safely and securely they can use the AI.
Oh, sorry. It was great, Jyothis. I think you talked about lots of things. I think owning the data is where most of the organization will feel comfortable, because they own the data, and they're even if let's say external companies owning the data, being audited, the right to audit at any time would make them feel comfortable, because they're trusting that the data that is there, it is transparent. And I think providing transparency would build a lot of trust over both ends, over the recruiter end as well as candidate ends. If a candidate understands how the data is was done, and if they are being reviewed by that, so it will prove that additional layer of trust, and the trust gap that is there would also be solved. uh, just while you have covered lots in a great detail, Miles, do you have anything to add to this, or we can move to the next section?
No, I think I spoke earlier on about back to basics, and I was talking about the processes. It's the same with data. I actually challenge any organization anywhere in the world to say their data is 100% clean. Okay. The interesting thing is that They always say that AI hallucinates and it comes up with the wrong stuff and it has bias, etc., etc. I did a study, so I released a tool called Ask Milo in about 18 months ago. So it's a prompt engineer, it's a prompt library. It's got about 164,000 different prompts in 100 categories to help consultants and businesses, because the biggest problem normally when you're using AI is what question to ask the AI. And a lot of people said to me, yeah, but AI hallucinates and it can sometimes give you the wrong answer, etc., etc. It definitely can. But the studies that I did is that at that stage, AI was around about 75% accurate. But management, maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm a management consultant, but management consultants were only about 35% accurate. Because remember, when I'm giving advice to a client, all I have is what's in my head. Okay, which I think is good. But if I'm giving advice through an AI tool, I've got every single management consultant globally's thoughts that I can leverage off. And I think the bias part, and I see there again, Pushpa ask a question about, reading social media posts, and it all comes back to how do you train your data sets. And I don't believe you'll ever get it totally right. But the thing to me, and I'm not trying to downplay the importance of the data in this world of AI, but the problem with data is not an AI problem. It's been a problem for decades. I mean, I've got one of my clients. It's one of the biggest banks in Africa. Just in their home loans division, they have 70 different IT systems they work with, and their data doesn't read each other. So now you're worrying about my AI data, but yet you can't even get your systems to talk to each other. So I'm not trying to downplay it. It is an important issue, but I do think companies actually have bigger problems to solve than the AI issue. But I do, again, coming back to Push's question, I mean, we saw with my fellow South African, and I say that with heavy heart because I don't consider him a fellow South African, but Elon Musk, and the Grok and whatever. I mean, it can be extremely biased, because that's the way it was trained. Not necessarily intentionally, but the way you train your data is that's the bias it's going to come up with at the end of the day. And a very good point there again, Pushpa, about LinkedIn and Facebook. So especially on LinkedIn, I have about 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I'm very careful what I put up on LinkedIn. On Facebook, I'm also fairly careful what I put up, but not as much as LinkedIn. If I was to apply today for a visa to go to America, I wouldn't get in because I don't know if you know, they actually look at your social media accounts. And I'm very critical of the American government. So if I want to apply to go to America, the first thing I'm going to do is delete my Facebook account, because then they can't, I suppose they could go and have a look. But the bias is definitely there. But it's something that, again, if we bring the human back into this, we need to manage that, and understand that there may be some bias here, and it may be inherent in the data that we've trained the system on.
Myles, you covered a lot of things, but also there's a burning question in the audience, right, which is very about this particular topic, which is put up by Pushpa. She asked that would profiling candidate include social media postings, political inclinations from sites other than LinkedIn, right? And how is this pulled without a candidate's approval? So while we talk about profiling by AI, so Jyothis, would you?
But I don't. So I think, for example, if we're talking about tools like Zappyhire or I don't know if I'm allowed to say these types of things, Jyothis, but Zappyhire, Manital, SkillSource, they're not pulling data from social media sites. They are literally the job boards. They are bringing in the candidates' information and they are analyzing that. So that's the recruitment side from a a tool like a Zappyhire. Does that mean that a talent acquisition person doesn't go and look at my social media posts? That's now a human issue. That's not a AI issue. That's a human issue that we need to actually address, not the AI issue.
Okay.
Totally agree with you, Myles. Totally agree with that. So, the data which we are even extracting from the social media is a public data, not any private data, right? So the people who are writing something in the LinkedIn or even in Facebook or any other platform, it is a public data. Anyone can see that, and anyone can actually read through APIs. So as you rightly mentioned, it's not an AI problem, it's a more personal problem.
That I think that hope answers your question, Pushpa. And let's move on to the last section. Just a reminder, please, if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in a Q&A. We'll be covering that in a very short time. We talked about bias and how we can bring trust, and Jyothis mentioned some great points. But I think one of the things that also came out or comes out is that there's an underlying question: where does AI end and where does the human begin? Because not that human decision always accurate, but people tend to trust more human decisions than AI in certain cases, not all the cases. So if you see on the screen, we asked, right, a recruiter's role, what they want, what they ideally should be. 54% of them want all decisions to be a balanced mix of AI and human, and 36 wanted mostly human driven with AI as support. So 90%, it totals 90%, which they said humans should meaningfully in the loop. So Myles, when you see this, what do organizations actually getting this right have in common, like keeping humans meaningfully in the loop and not just relying on AI?
If you have a look at for those of you who are familiar with something called levels of work or levels of accountability or complexity, it's about sort of the level of complexity of decisions within an organization. So those decisions that are automatable, that can are repetitive, are also a drag on the system, like a lot of the administration stuff. So, as we've spoken a bit on this call, on this webinar, is, if we look at recruitment can, bring in your applications. It can pass the CVs. It can start doing preliminary matches. It can potentially, and this is where the human now comes in and say, okay, here's the potential matches to the job requirements. I'd like to do an AI interview with these people. Okay, but let the human make that decision, which ones are going to go for an AI interview or not. I want to assess these people. So the more complex the decision becomes, the more human. And that's where the humans come in. And I think also one has to have a look now in terms of, you had a slide on earlier on about governance. Where's going to be the biggest impact on the reputation of a company going to be? Let humans make those decisions, okay? So even if, and I use my Spock AI tool to make recommendations for me, but I sit and I go through those recommendations, and I change the stuff. So, at the end of the day, let AI help you get to a 80% answer as quickly as possible. But that last part of the answer, the 20%, that's where the humans must come in. And that's where judgment and creativity and empathy and, again, coming back to Pushpa's question about bias, you can actually potentially look at let's say, an AI interview, and it gives you a trust score or whatever it is. But it might have built in and said, this person. So I'm going to use an example. One of the tools, says if I'm being with an AI interview and I am, at the end of the day, I'm not looking in the camera. all the time. It's going to say this person is not necessarily trustworthy. Now, in a South African context, especially with our, if I can say this, but I want to use a specific example with our black African population. So we've got 11 official languages, of which 9 of them are black African languages. In those black African tribes, looking somebody in the eye, specifically for the older people, is actually a sign of disrespect. Okay, so they will not look you in the eye. So this AI interview might say this person is not trustworthy because they're not looking into the camera. But in fact, that's not true, and that's where you got to bring that human in. And again, coming back to Push's question about bias, if I understand that, it's a similar thing. There's so many examples I could use of the difference in culture, but this is where the humans really need to come in and say, okay, I hear what the AI is recommending, and I can see the reports it's given me, but I understand this a little bit deeper than what the AI does, because remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's a machine. Okay, that's all it is. It's actually a machine.
I think that was beautifully answered. Training, I think it was beautifully answered, and I wouldn't want to add to that. I think that covers the point on how to include human in those sensitive parts of the decision making, which is towards the end, and those things can be automated, should be done by AI. So, there's anything to add over here? Would you want to add anything to add?
No, I think what you said is absolutely right. Of course, the different cultures has a different aspects of doing some activities or how they behave, and it has a different meanings at the different places or the cultures. So yeah, what AI can do is max is to train it a bit more into a more hyper cultural aspects, because one of the recent work we are doing is within the the Gulf regions, where probably they are not comfortable to attend a video interviews, right? And of course we cannot probably look at how they act, how they articulate, and so on and so forth. Even probably they will use their own clothes to fully shaded, using a shades instead of showing the faces. So then what we did was we have actually changed the algorithm a little bit and give more importance to the voice than the facial expressions. Before it was mix of both. So that kind of a fine tuning or a very tweaking has to do in case if you're moving from a culture A to culture B and to C. I mean, at max, we can do it. As rightly mentioned by Myles, sometimes the human has to interpret the findings or the responses from the AI and take the well-informed decisions. So, if you're using AI to give you right information for taking the right decision, fair enough. But we are not leaving the control to AI to take decisions, because as rightly mentioned multiple times, the ingested knowledge into the machine learning or even to the LLM can be completely biased based on some aspects.
Very well answered. Next, before we next is we move on to Q&A, but I have a question that I would want to ask, and most of the recruiters in the for the room, for the recruiters in the room who are wondering how their role will change or evolve in the next 5 years. It could be at any management level. What would you tell them to expect? How will their role change in the next 5 years? Myles, we'll start with you.
I think what I think recruiters should, it sounds just like a word change, but it's not really. They need to move from recruiters to what we call talent agents. Okay. If you think about sport, especially soccer, and that may be a sore point at the moment because I'm a Manchester United supporter, even though we did much better than last year, is those players have agents that get them the best job, and the best way to get into a top club is to have an agent. And I think you need to, specifically with this, we are going to, the talent war is going to get more tight and more tight and more tight, particularly as people start realizing that we need jobs like AI prompt engineers. I mean, that wasn't in the job architecture 2 years ago. Now everybody's looking for AI prompt engineers, and everybody's looking for them. So if you haven't built them, where are you going to find these people? So you need to start looking, first of all, as I said right at the beginning, start determining what those future jobs are, where you currently stand in terms of having the capabilities for those future jobs as a business, and then start building your talent into the future, be that internal, be that bringing people externally in. Even, one of the things I'm starting to do in South Africa with some graduates straight out of university in business analysis is taking those business analysts and putting them in with and working with us straight away, because that gives them experience, but they also haven't learned all the bad habits. And we start building talent into the future, because we know that business analysts are going to be one of those jobs that are going to get more and more scarce into the future. So yeah, think of yourself as a talent agent rather than as a recruiter.
I think that's a very nice ring to a talent agent. Jyothis, how would you answer?
I really like the conclusion, Myles. Thanks for that. So yeah, of course, as rightly he's mentioned, recruiters if the recruiter is doing just sort of a work which they were more transactional, that's not going to stay for sure. I think most of the people in the room probably digest that fact by the now. But for example, if they are just looking at finding out the people from LinkedIn or from any other source and push that into ATS or any other platform, that's not what it's going to do in next couple of years. Of course, they have to know how to use LLMs properly, and one area where probably LLM cannot do is probably engage and curate these candidates properly, right? So that way, where this transactional things will be taken care by the AIs, but more statistical things can be taken by the humans. If you can build that kind of a skills with you from moving from transactional to more strategical skills, to you also occupy with the new skills like prompt engineering, how to use LLMs. Can I automate some of the things internally? For example, you can use Cloud and build small utilities to run some of the tasks you keep doing it, right? So it's eventually you become more like a talent master or talent architect than just a TA person. So that way, the roles has been changing a lot. As rightly mentioned and quoted by Myles when we started the conversation, that a lot of jobs which you're currently doing probably will not be there for next 5 years, after 5 years, but there are new jobs will be getting introduced into this space. So how fast you are adopting your new technologies and how you're adopting with the changes defines what you're going to be relevant or not relevant in the future jobs.
I think that ends brings a good conclusion and finding jobs. I think we only have one question, and that is one question left. That is from Pushpa Raman from Primus Global Technologies. We'll move to Q&A. I'll share the screen. Just like organizations using AI for screening resume, candidates are also using AI to come up with matching CV. This is one of the points that we had discussed, Jyothis, as well. There could be CVs which are picked up by AI as compatible and relevant candidates who have not mentioned all the required details might be missed out. How do we deal with this?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just answer this question. See, I have seen this a lot in the current implementations. So as I mentioned before, both side of the people are occupied with these tools, and it's quite fascinating that both of them have the same tools and they'll try to see where it is going to match. But for us, when we look at from an platform perspective, CV is sort of dead, right? It's a glorified marketing material, nothing else. So how do we have a more engagement with this candidate to understand about the candidate beyond the CVs? And of course, the CVs are references, but not the material which you have to digest as it is. But with that, we also build a couple of conversational engagement tools with the candidates, and we also engaging with the candidates through an automated video interviews to understand the different attributes about the candidate, different measure the some of the competencies which is claimed, and so on and so forth. So that holistic data points actually using to evaluate the candidates than trusting or focusing only resume as a single source of the truth, right? So that way we can ensure that we are not biased about one source channel of information. At the same time, using AI, we can engage a little more and deeper and according to their the candidate's convenience, so that that information will be extracted and use that information to screen or understand the candidate for the further process of the talent acquisition.
And I can't help but plug in Zappyhire, which is where it does not rely on CVs, but also all those candidates applying receive the first call in 5 minutes, and based on that, the evaluation goes into play. So those who Jyothis, would you want to talk about that in a minute? Zappyhire, what it is?
Yeah. Quickly, because to respect everyone's time, so we are also introducing AI agent sourcing products into the market, where the system has a capability to engage with the candidates who are probably not in the platform or any other widely adopted platform like Naukri, LinkedIn, and so on. So this kind of candidates are more not active candidates, but they are very good candidates as well. So we have a mechanism to reach out to those kind of candidates and conduct the first interview, and then source that as a candidate source to the large enterprises or the companies is used. So we are introducing India's first AI agentic sourcing product, which will help you to identify the right talent. When I say right, it is vetted talent. It's not you download some resume from the Naukri. It's not like that. It's already vetted candidates by AI, and giving that sources will help you to understand the candidate better, of course, and speed the entire process of your hiring.
Jyothis, I think with that we come to an end. For everyone over here who joined and who could not stay till the end, we'll be sharing the copy of the report and also the exclusive insights that were shared today. Those are not going to be in the report, but we'll be sharing that with you. And so the others who could not make it, they are losing out on great insights and conversations. And I want to thank you, Myles and Jyothis, for your time today. I think the conversation was great, and we had a good turnout, and those people would have good takeaways from the session, the actionables as well, which you talked about, and also talking about how humans versus AI and how to involve AI and come over the implementation challenges as well. So thank you for your time. Thank you everyone for joining. And any last words, Myles or Jyothis? Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much for everyone to join, especially Myles. I know how busy you are, and thanks for the joining and giving some time and share your thoughts with us. Thanks again.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a real pleasure. And as I say, India is a place that's very close to my heart. As I said right at the beginning, I think those people, if you're in the talent space, you're in the right place. I really believe that talent acquisition, talent management, talent attraction, development, retention, that's the future. Companies that struggle with that will struggle to actually stay alive. So yeah, the world is your oyster.
a lot, Miles. Thank you, everyone.